Well,
Thompson to the glass. Early going. David Thompson for Denver hits the field goal. Dawkins will jump up on Issel. Rebound Wilkerson. Thompson and Cheeks is there, and then David comes right up.
David Thompson, one of the NBA's first gravity-defying players. He's perhaps the greatest college basketball player ever, and a man who was idolized by Michael Jordan. Before we get near any of Thompson's on-the-court achievements, we have to take a look at his background. He grew up as the youngest of 11 siblings in Bowling Springs, North Carolina. He and his cousin Alvin Gentry, who was a former head coach in the NBA and now vice president of basketball operations for the Kings, used to play on a dirt court after church. This court had no nets, and the rims were made of old bicycle wheels. But in this small space in North Carolina, one of the greatest offensive forces was crafting his game day by day. By the time David was in 8th grade, he stood 5'8" and could already dunk a basketball. His vertical leap would launch him high enough for the rim, but as a basketball freshman, his leap landed him in an unfamiliar territory. In high school, he began attending Crest Senior High in Shelby, North Carolina. The town is named after Isaac Shelby, a Revolutionary War hero of the Battle of nearby Kings Mountain. With a ton of racism in its history, it was no surprise that some folks were against desegregating schools, and in 1968, David Thompson would face the task of integrating into a school without knowing what kind of hostility he would face. Thompson said, "It was tough because a lot of people down there didn't really want it, but it was forced on them. We had some people in key positions that made the transition a little bit easier, and I think a lot of times sports is a great way to bring people closer." Luckily for Thompson, basketball head coach Ed Peeler embraced the new changes and had no problem coaching African American athletes. "Coach treated all of us the same, and that's all you can ask for," said Thompson. "The first year there was maybe 2 black players on the team, and by my senior year we had 5 black starters. I don't know if a lot of the fans really liked that down there, but my coach played the best players, and that was that. He withstood the pressure and did what was right. I respect him for that, and we're still good friends today." Unfortunately, Edwin Eugene Ed Peeler died on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at the age of 86. But for what he did for African American athletes at Crest High, I thank you.
Thompson driving to the left, gets past Elroy, falls. Thompson drives and shoots and hits. 39 points for David Thompson. Here's David driving the full length to the floor. He lays it up. He's good. Thompson firing in the left corner. Hits again.
He would dominate high above the rim in high school and landed a scholarship with NC State, for whom he would play for 3 seasons. Unfortunately for Thompson, NC State was banned from postseason play in his first season for violations during his recruitment. So even though he led the team to an undefeated 27-0 record, they didn't get any hardware. What's interesting about college basketball during this time is that the Lou Alcindor rule was put in place, who was later to be known as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and one of the greatest basketball players ever. So the Lou Alcindor rule meant that nobody could dunk a basketball. That's how dominant Kareem was in college. David Thompson claims that this ruined all his highlights, and honestly, it's probably very true. But at the same time, he gave one of the greatest gifts to basketball fans, the alley-oop. During practice one day, Monty Toe threw the ball up to David Thompson, and he went up above the rim, caught it, and dropped it without touching the cylinder. Head coach Norman Sloan's response to this play? Maybe we could add this into our offense. The following season, in 1974, Thompson would command the Wolfpack over the unbeatable UCLA Bruins, who had won 9 out of the previous 10 NCAA titles. In this game, Thompson was playing with 15 stitches in his head and a concussion. With the protocol nowadays, he definitely wouldn't have been able to play.
Then they can go to the bench. Walton off the lead driving, passing to Walton. Blocked by David Thompson. David Thompson went high in the air to block it. Rivers rides and a foul call on Greg Lee.
Comes from nowhere. Here we are. We see Greg Lee faking, passing under Burleson to Walton. Walton goes up, and there's David Thompson, 6'4", going up and blocking the shot of a man.
I never saw a man his height jump like he did.
Nevertheless, after 2 overtimes in the Final Four, NC State would topple UCLA 80-77 before defeating Marquette in the championship 76-64.
2 free throws put the game out of reach, and Greensboro Coliseum erupted in celebration. Final score in double overtime: North Carolina State 80, UCLA 77.
If you thought all of that was crazy, the wildest thing about this year was that Thompson and NC State had to beat Maryland in the ACC championship game to even make the tournament. At the time, only conference champions were invited to the NCAA tournament, and in 1974, Maryland and NC State were considered the 2 best teams in college basketball. With all this at stake, Thompson scored 29 points as NC State won what is considered as one of the greatest college basketball games of all time, 103-100 in overtime. This historic game led to permanent changes as the NCAA expanded the tournament from 25 teams to 32 the next year. Unfortunately, NC State missed out on the tournament in Thompson's final year, but as a mere consolation prize, he was selected first overall in the upcoming ABA and NBA drafts. Now, before we get to his pro career, I'd like to include an excerpt from Monty Toe, his point guard while they played at NC State.
David was as good a teammate as you could have. He was your best player, but he also loved to win, and he also cared a lot about his teammates. He was one of the most humble people I've ever been around. And if you got your great player that's your best leader and also very humble and cares about winning, that really makes you somebody like David Thompson.
Despite being selected first overall in the NBA draft by the Atlanta Hawks, Thompson was also selected first overall by the ABA's Denver Nuggets, who he decided to sign with instead of the Atlanta Hawks. In his first season in the ABA, Thompson was a demon on the court, leading the Denver Nuggets all the way to the ABA Finals, where they would lose to Julius Erving's New York Nets in 6 games. His season high for points in his rookie year came on February 2nd, when he scored 50 points against the San Antonio Spurs, who ended up losing in 7 games to the New York Nets in the semifinal of the playoffs that season. So he basically dropped a 50-burger on a top 3 team in the league as a rookie. But that wasn't the most exciting performance that Thompson put on for fans. He also participated in the first ever slam dunk contest against, well, you might have guessed, Dr. J, Julius Erving.
And the shortest man entered at 6'4", but as Dr. J observed, he plays like he's 7 feet. In his rookie season, amazing fans around the league with his explosive jumping ability, the Denver Nuggets, David Thompson. David Thompson and Dr. J. And here is the Denver Nuggets, David Thompson.
Alright, I'm hopping on the live comm. Let's see what's... Ooh, okay, a little double clutch. 2-handed tomahawk. I mean, that's nothing crazy. You know, you'll see that at the park every now and then nowadays. I'll give that like a 7. It's definitely new, but let's see what he got in the second dunk. Ugh. What was that? What's the dotted line? Was it like 12 feet away? Something like that. Okay, I see why Dr. J dunked from the free throw line now, because obviously that was impressive. That was a cool tomahawk, but it wasn't as far. And then, double clutch reverse. What are you, Dominique Wilkins? Jeez, looking like MJ Dominique. That was pretty mean. I've never seen these dunks from Thompson. I've actually only watched Irving's highlights from this dunk contest. So let's see this last one. Okay, I don't know what the heck that was. All right, David, you threw me for one there. You threw me for the... I don't know what that was, but it looked pretty difficult. What's he going to do on this sideline? Let's see what kind of baseline we got going on. Oh, shit. Oh, yo, I did not see that. He did that? He did that in 1976? What? Yo, okay, those were actually pretty crazy. Yo, I'm sorry for covering my mouth on the last dunk, so it probably sounds a little muffled for y'all, but I was not expecting that. Like, I've been avoiding these dunks, this slam dunk contest, for so long during this research, because I was like, I want to react to it live and just give my live commentary. And honestly, I don't know how I did, but hopefully it sounded good to y'all. But anyway, back to the doc. The following offseason saw the NBA and ABA merge, in which the Denver Nuggets survived and David Thompson continued playing for them. For his counterpart, Dr. Julius Erving, he ended up being picked up by the Philadelphia 76ers. Now Thompson, in his first official NBA season, averaged 25.9, so basically 26, points per game, which landed him third in the league for total points, falling behind legend Pete Maravich and GOAT contender Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now this next season, Thompson was dunking on people, hitting the mid-range, and he went on a tear averaging 27.1 points on a really efficient 52% shooting, especially for the high-paced late 70s. The funny thing is, on the last day of the season, Thompson went for it all. Eager to win the scoring crown from George the Iceman Gervin, Thompson got the okay from head coach Larry Brown to go for broke and chase the scoring title. Despite losing the game 135 to 131, Thompson went off for our gargantuan 73 points in one game, including 53 in the first half alone. Get this, Thompson shot 13 of 14 in the first quarter, hitting his first 8 shots and knocking down 6 of 6 free throws for a total of 32 first quarter points, which broke the previous record by 1 set by Wilt Chamberlain in 1962 against the Knicks. He kept it going, scoring 21 in the second, but the eventual double, triple, and quadruple teams, which held Thompson up for a measly 6 points in the third quarter. In total, like I said, he finished with 73, and he did it on incredible shooting. He shot 28 for 38 and 17 for 20 from the free throw line, an absolute all-time classic.
The young star continued to make his mark on the court. He's Denver's David Thompson, who scored 73 points in today's game, joining Wilt Chamberlain as the only other player to top 72 points in a single game.
3 guys guarding me. They were bumping me, knocking me down. It got real physical. But I managed to get 20 points in the second half and had 73 points for the basketball game. It was one of those games where everything you put up was going in the basket. So that was pretty exciting.
This performance, which was done on the last day of the season during the early games, set up one of the biggest fuck you games ever, and I mean crazy. So George Gervin saw this performance and thought, well, you know, I need 59 points to move past Thompson, so why don't I go and get it? He dropped 63 against the New Orleans Jazz to retake the scoring title. In one day, the last game of the season, 2 players went for 63 plus. An absolutely historic day for the NBA. In the playoffs that year, Thompson would get as close to an NBA championship as he ever would, losing in 6 games in the Western Conference Finals to the Seattle Supersonics. Despite this, he put up pretty good numbers, averaging 25 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists on decent efficiency, 45% field goal percentage. In spite of the playoff loss, David Thompson would sign a 5-year, $4 million contract, which made NBA history as the highest paying contract at the time, which is really wild because now Supermaxes go for like $300 million. But after Thompson signed that contract, he was no longer just David Thompson. I was excited about it, but I didn't realize how everybody was going to look at it. After I signed that contract, I was no longer David Thompson. I was David Thompson, the highest paid player. David Thompson, the $4 million man. And Thompson was surprisingly able to match expectations. Well, at least at first. He put up averages of 24 points per game, 3 assists, and 3.6 rebounds while shooting an efficient 51% from the field. The Nuggets were unfortunately knocked out by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the Lakers in 3 games that postseason. Thompson scored 27 or more points while shooting 50% or better in each game, so you can't really blame the loss on him. From here on out, though, things would go downhill. The following 1979 to 1980 season, Thompson dealt with plantar fasciitis, which limited him to just 39 games. Other athletes who have suffered from this injury are Jason Kidd, MLB players Albert Pujols and Evan Longoria, and it's really common in runners. What causes this is inflammation in the tissue of your foot that connects your heel to your toes. This injury transformed Thompson's life. His cocaine and alcohol use skyrocketed, and he became negligent in his responsibilities. Missing flights, showing up late to practices, Thompson isolated himself from the team, and in every experience of drug abuse, hiding your emotions and backing away from those who care about you will never generate a good result. In December, Thompson resigned as co-captain, and after a poor 30-52 record, critics immediately blamed him. This is no surprise in actuality. For any superstar, it's playoffs or bust, and for the league's highest ever paid player, there was no room for error. Despite averaging good numbers during the 1980-81 season, the 26-year-old Thompson didn't even make the All-Star team, as guys like George Gervin, Dennis Johnson, Walter Davis, Paul Westphal, and Otis Birdsong made it over him. A big reason for this was once again Denver's team struggles. They missed the playoffs with a 37-45 record, and the following season, Thompson would only start in 5 games. So you're thinking, plantar fasciitis? Nope. He was benched. And for who? Well, Alex English, of course. English would end up becoming the all-time leading scorer for the Denver Nuggets, and he still leads that by a wide margin, although I expect Nikola Jokic to catch up in time. Despite adding English, Denver were once again knocked out in round 1 of the playoffs, this time by the Phoenix Suns, and from here on out, Thompson's NBA career basically began coming to a close. On June 17, 1982, the Denver Nuggets traded Thompson to the Seattle Supersonics for Bill Hanslick and a draft pick. At the same time, the Denver Post ran a story explaining Thompson's drug use titled "Nugget Star's Use of Cocaine Disclosed." Despite averaging mediocre numbers for the Seattle Supersonics the following season, Thompson actually made the 1983 All-Star Game. He got more votes than George Gervin, who was averaging 26 at the time and coming off of a 32-point-per-game season. Unfortunately, since becoming the highest paid player in NBA history, Thompson's life took a downturn as his drug usage increased. Alcohol and cocaine are extremely addictive, and their excessive use can lead any great man or woman down a dark path. In 1984, dreams really came to an end after Thompson was pushed down a flight of stairs during a fight at Studio 54 in New York City. He tried out for the Indiana Pacers the following year but couldn't make the team as the gruesome knee injury that was left at Studio 54 caused Thompson's career to officially end. By 1987, Thompson was sentenced to 180 days in jail for shoving his wife during a domestic dispute. Thankfully, Thompson had a saving grace. His name was Doug Murrin, a local pastor who convinced a judge to send him to a rehab center instead of jail. While in the rehab game room, the television set clicked on. The screen displayed Julius Erving being honored at halftime of his final home game as a 76er. As Erving reflected on his career, he was asked who was his best opponent. The first name out of his mouth was David Thompson. "It kinda hit home and really helped me turn myself around," said Thompson. "He was on TV and here I was in jail going through this situation. That kinda helped me as far as me wanting to get my life back on track. You kinda realize that you still got self-worth." By 1991, Thompson and his wife Kathy got back together after being separated for 4 years. They moved from Seattle to Charlotte with their 2 daughters. In 2016, Kathy passed away while battling diabetes and suffering from kidney complications. At the end of the day, David Thompson was a freak of nature who had a running vertical leap of 48 inches and a standing vertical of 44 inches. Although his prime was short, His playstyle affected basketball for multiple generations. He overcame a dark period of his life, and I wish him the best. Just remember this: before there was Air Jordan, there was SkyWalker.
Welcoming Michael is one of his basketball role models, the Hall of Famer known as SkyWalker, class of 1996, David Thompson. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Jordan.
4 weeks, and everybody's saying, well, why did you pick David Thompson? I know why. David knows why, and maybe you guys don't know why, but as I grew up in North Carolina, I was 11 years old, 1974, I think, when you guys won the championship. And I was an anti-Carolina guy. I hated UNC. And here I ended up at UNC. But I was in love with David Thompson. Not just for the game of basketball, but in terms of what he represented. You know, we all, as Vivian said, we go through our trials and tribulations. And he did. And I was inspired by him. And when I called him and asked him to stand up for me, I know I shocked the shit out of him. I know I did.